Does anyone remember when Kell Brook fought Gennady Golovkin? Does anyone remember that? So in 2016, Gennady Golovkin was in talks to fight Chris Eubank Jr. The famous Chris Eubank Jr. lost his pen incident, or that's what the way Eddie Hearn called it. And subsequently, Kell Brook stepped up to the plate when he didn't have to. For a career high payday of a couple of million, to fight Triple G, it was in the O2 in September of 2016. Now he lost that fight. He gave a good account of himself, though he did better than a lot of other Triple G opponents did. But he was a welterweight going up to 160 pound when he had a welterweight strap on him. Now, a lot of people have said that that was a mistake. A lot of people feel that that kind of it did damage him, eye injury and all that. It damaged him, and it also didn't help that he had to then go and move back down to 147 to face his mandatory in Errol Spence, which really depleted him. And Kell Brook was never really the same after that. And I guess you could maybe say the Spence fight as well. He did well in that fight up until he got stopped, but you know what I mean. Now, why am I bringing that up? Well, Kell Brook didn't need to take that fight. He chose to. And if he hadn't have took that fight, there was a lot of talk that he would have been facing, at the time he was WBO champion actually, Jesse Vargas. Now Jesse Vargas, because that fight didn't happen, he ended up fighting Manny Pacquiao for a lot of money. He lost that fight, but nevertheless, he ended up fighting him. Now, Kell Brook against Jesse Vargas in 2016, Kell Brook, in my opinion, would have won that fight. And that could have led him on to a potential fight against Pacquiao, but it could have given him big money fights at welterweight without having to go up and down and take that punishment from Triple G Gennady Golovkin. So in many ways, Kell Brook, he looked at the quick road, the quick route to get money, but didn't see all the bumps that were there. Instead of looking down the other road, which is longer, you can see that big basket of money at the end of it. It's a lot smoother, but it is longer. What do you want to go down? You're in a nice car. You go down that smooth road and get to that basket of money, or you can go that way, which is quicker, but the bumps, it's going to wreck the car before it even gets there. That's what I mean. I wonder, has the same happened to Martin Bakole? Not necessarily that he took a great deal. He didn't take anywhere near as much punishment in the Joseph Parker fight that Kell Brook took at the Triple G fight. But it's the same it's worse really in this sense, because Martin Bakole, look, it's hard for me because it's harder to justify Kell Brook really because, as I said, there was plenty of options there. I can kind of get why he did it. He took that big payday, but he was never going into this fight to win it. He didn't look in any kind of shape. He arrived God knows what time, Saudi time. He probably was operating on 4 or 5 hours kip, which is nothing. And yeah, he looked absolutely spent just in the ring walk. He was never going to win the fight. Again, career high payday most likely. Can't really fault them or blame him in that regard. But Floyd Schofield, who didn't fight on this card, we were at the press conference for the kickoff when he was there. He was saying his team didn't want him to take the Shakur Stevenson fight. They didn't want him to take it. Now, bear in mind, he would have had a full camp. Well, he pulled out on fight week, but you know what I mean. He had a full camp, everything. And his team was still a little bit unsure. Bakole's team, Billy Nelson, we all know my opinion on Billy Nelson, they were telling him to take this fight. Now, this right here could go one of two ways for Martin Bakole in the long run. Apparently he's going to be fighting in May. Now I'm hearing that he's not going to get his next fight, whoever it may be against, won't be a final eliminator for the IBF title. That's what I'm hearing. I could be wrong on that, you never know, but that's certainly what I was hearing, certainly, from the hearsay. So if he fights again in May against whomever that may be, may very well be F.A. Ajagba, who knows, but likelihood is that's not going to put him in, prime position to challenge for a world title, because a Martin Bakole with a full, say, 12-week camp is a very dangerous proposition to any heavyweight, including Alexander Usyk, Daniel Dubois, Joseph Parker. Oh, yes, he is. Had he had a full camp, I probably would have picked him to win the fight, had he had a full camp. The problem then becomes, one, if you do get a fight, say, with F.A. Ajagba, and I think with a full camp he'd beat him pretty soundly. What then? Because if you're not a mandatory, none of the champions are under any obligation to fight you. They're going to know how dangerous you are. You know, the best thing you could have done is play the long waiting game. Because if you think about it like this, if you fight F.A. Ajagba, you're then mandatory for Daniel Dubois. Now, Daniel Dubois will likely, irrespective of whether he fought Joseph Parker or not, the winner would likely have fought Alexander Usyk. So you weren't going to get an immediate crack. Fair enough. If it's Daniel Dubois who fights Usyk and say beats him, you're first in line for a crack at him. So you get a world title shot and probably more money for that world title shot than you would have got for this short notice gig against Joseph Parker. Seriously, probably would have got it, because if it was Usyk, you get an awful lot of money. If it was Dubois, likewise, you get an awful lot of money. That's best case scenario. Worst case scenario is maybe they make the fight against F.A. Ajagba for the interim title, not just mandatory, for the interim, because they might know the IBF, okay, he's fighting such and such. A bit like what they did with Hrgovic Dubois, put an interim belt on the line and wait and see what happens. Now again, worst case scenario, say Alexander Usyk beats Daniel Dubois and he vacates that IBF title again, because that's likely what he'd do, you're world champion. You're then in prime position to make those sort of demands. If it's a unification, you're getting the line, or you're probably going to get a good share of the purse. But if it's a mandatory defence, and say the Saudis want to pick it up and do it on a Riyadh show, you're getting the lion's share of the purse. People, that's not a great deal away. You know, if Daniel Dubois fights Alexander Usyk in the summer and he fights Bakole, had have not taken this fight and fought in May, you're talking what, come December, at the very least early next year, you're getting... You know, you're getting probably big fights, big paydays, or you're a world champion, and now fighters are kind of obliged to fight you. Say Anthony Joshua fights Tyson Fury in the summer, and you're IBF champion, and then they decide to do... You see what I mean here? Now, you're going to be out in the wilderness again. Now you're going to have to fight in May. You might win, you might look good, but you're not going to see any heavyweights jumping for joy to be fighting you. You know, Joseph Parker, I can imagine, you know, he was quite happy when he heard it was Bakole. When you think about it like that, you're going to take Bakole's scalp, and he's got literally probably a day's notice or 2 days notice, but by the time he's in Riyadh, he's only going to have a couple of hours. You know, honestly, I get it from a financial point of view, but in one sense I kind of don't, because you have to look at it from the long run. And I think that obviously Bakole, apparently he had some trepidation about going into this fight. Billy Nelson, of course, didn't, because of course he doesn't give a damn. Because he doesn't. I mean, Billy Nelson is your typical Fury fanboy, because Billy Nelson will always brag on about how Bakole beats this guy, Bakole beats that guy. He never brings up Tyson Fury. Never brings him up. It's always Bakole. He's never, without overtly saying it, but you see what he was like in the run to the first Usyk fight. Fury wins it easy, this, that, and the other. And Bakole beats Joshua. He beats Dubois. What about Fury? So that kind of tells you that your own trainer, you know, there you go. I wouldn't care even if my trainer didn't believe it. I still want him to say that I beat them all, you know. So they didn't have Bakole's real best interest at heart. Realistically, they had their own, you know. I mean, Billy Nelson, how many fighters does he have in his stable other than Martin Bakole? Because again, a bit like the Tunde Ajayi one, you don't see many fighters, and I know he's based in Scotland. A lot of fighters, certainly in the UK, are based in kind of London, Manchester, Liverpool area, which is, you know, still, you know, Scotland is, obviously we know where Scotland is, but you know what I mean, it's far away, you know, it's cold, it's not nice, but neither is Ireland, to be fair, but you know what I mean. Yeah, a lot of fighters don't go up there. Martin Bakole does, and he seems happy, but I wonder what he's going to do moving forward after this. He could well have effed his career up with this move. A short-term gain, but in the long term, what is it going to do? And it's like I said at the start of this video when I spoke about Kell Brook and the Triple G situation. You're in a car, you're in a very low BMW, you have a straight road ahead of you. It's long. It'll get you to the end of that road, and you'll see that big pot of gold at the end of it. Or you could go that way. It is shorter. It has a pot of gold as such, but my God, there is potholes galore there. Will that car even survive by the time it gets to the end? I don't know. We could be in that situation with Bakole here. Let me know your thoughts in the comments section below. Do you think that this is a blip on the radar, but it won't really hinder him that much in the long run? Or do you think that this will give fighters ample reason to say, ha 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 ha, you bring nothing to the table, I ain't giving you a voluntary, earn a mandatory crack, and he's right at the back of the queue now? How long will that take? How old is Bakole? Some are saying he's 31, some are saying he's 34, some are saying he's 30. We don't even know how old he is. I suspect, whatever age he is, I'd add a couple of years on, because I remember when he was coming around first, when he first came on the scene, he was in his, I think he was in his late 20s. He would have been in his late 20s. He didn't look in his late 20s, to say the least. Now he's in his mid 30s. Let me know your thoughts. Hope you enjoyed it. Smash the like button, all that good stuff. Until next time.